About 20% of the 2.4 million U.S. troops who served in the Afghanistan and Iraq wars may meet the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. That's coming into focus today as the military investigates what led a U.S. soldier to massacre Afghan civilians just days ago. There's also rampant speculation about what caused the soldier to snap.
He's a 38-year-old Army staff sergeant who served 3 combat tours in Iraq.
A senior U.S. defense official tells NBC News the soldier suffered a traumatic brain injury in a vehicle rollover.
You mentioned a possible emotional or mental issue. We know there's been a report that he was involved in a vehicle turnover, a traumatic brain injury as a result of that.
Paul Rieckhoff is the founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. He joins us now. Paul, I want to put something up on the screen here. This was the New York Daily News front cover this week. Sergeant Psycho, killer GI, had suffered traumatic brain injury. How much do you worry about this being just turned into a stereotype that hurts all veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan?
I worry about it a great deal, and the entire veterans and military community worries about it a great deal. I think what we want people to understand is this event in Afghanistan is tragic and it's absolutely terrible. It's bad for everybody involved, but it's not representative of the larger population of troops and veterans who've served honorably in Iraq and Afghanistan, almost 2.3 million of them. So we've got to resist the urge to stereotype, to rush to judgment, to oversimplify this situation. The Daily News should really be ashamed of themselves. I mean, that's bad journalism. That's bad media responsibility. To put out Sergeant Psycho, which folds into the pre-existing stereotypes that people have, is just not doing anyone any good. Most folks with post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury are doing well, are not violent. If you think about somebody like Bob Woodruff, who's been very high profile, who's got a traumatic brain injury, there's not necessarily a cause between traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and this type of outrageous, really crazy behavior.
And Paul, let's talk about the shooter for a minute here. NBC military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs, he's been very outspoken that the people who served with him saw signs of erratic behavior, that something wasn't right. The question I have for you is this a failure of the military chain of command in some meaningful way? And can we hope to solve a problem like this?
It may be, and I think that's why we need the investigation to take its course. And the military is pretty good at investigating situations like this. And I think they will be transparent with the American people and the people of Afghanistan about how this goes down. If people saw signs that they should have said something, there should be better checks in place. One thing that we know is for sure, separate from this situation, there's not enough mental health care support. There's not enough traumatic brain injury support. There's not enough family support. That's true when they're overseas. It's especially true when they come home. So you've got National Guardsmen who will come home for a year and then rotate back into theater, and they definitely need more help. So if there is something we can get from the American people who may be afraid, who may be shocked by this, use this as a positive way to get those troops more support. But understand, this is an isolated incident, and this is not the average soldier or veteran that you know that's in your classroom, in your place of work, and in your neighborhood.
Well, Paul, how do we, you mentioned this, it's not just when you're in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's when you come home oftentimes that's as, if not more difficult. How do you, let's talk about your organization, how do you go about trying to get these people the help that they need? And I'll add to that, mental illness, maybe not traumatic brain injury, but PTSD, this is still a country that is uncomfortable in some ways talking about mental illness. How do you get both the people afflicted by it to talk about it and speak about it, and how do you get them real help that matters?
Well, you take it head on, and you explain to people what PTSD is, and you explain to them that for many folks, this is the normal reaction your body will have to a traumatic incident like this, and it's like a bullet hole. If you got shot in the Army, you'd get it treated, you'd do rehab, you'd work with your family and get back on your feet, and you have to attack post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury in the same way. So we've got a mental health program at IAVA that connects veterans with other veterans who've been down this road, connects them with crisis prevention information, and just gives them a place to have connection and hope. And that's what veterans need more than anything else, is to be around people who know where they're coming from, because it can be a very isolating situation to come home from combat, not have anyone around who knows where you're coming from. So very aggressively, we've been trying to connect veterans with other veterans, and then with supportive resources that do need to be increased. So if Americans want to help support those critical organizations that are providing mental health support, family support in your communities and nationwide, because the supply there is definitely not keeping up with the demand.
Paul Rieckhoff, thanks for what you do.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the time.
Up next, the Politico briefing. Are Republicans ruining their chances at winning over Latino voters?